Welcome back, dear students. In the last class we have discussed about the different parts of a flowering plant, right? So you people know that a flowering plant is differentiated into underground root system and aerial shoot system, and the different organs or different structures that are born on the plant axis are called as organs. And also we know that there are two types of organs, so vegetative organs and reproductive organs. What are those vegetative organs? Roots, stem, leaves, branches. These are all the vegetative organs, whereas flowers and fruits are called as the reproductive organs because they are involved in the reproduction. That is, from those structures. So flower, it is called as a reproductive structure. After fertilization, the ovary part of this flowering there, it gets converted into the fruit. And from fruit, within the fruit, we can find the presence of seeds. From these seeds, many new individuals will be arising. So they are involved in the reproduction, and hence they are called as reproductive organs. Okay. Now let us look what the roots are. So what is a root? A root is a cylindrical structure. Usually to look, the roots, they will be the cylindrical structure. Where they will be present? They will be present under the ground. What color will be it? It will be usually non-green in color, usually brown in color because they are present inside the soil. So the roots are underground, non-green, cylindrical plant axis, and also it is a descending plant axis. What do you mean by descending plant axis? That is, usually these roots, they will go deep into the soil. So they will go deep into the soil, and hence it is called as descending plant axis. And also, what is the function of a root? The roots are involved in the absorption of water. So how do we define the root? So the root is defined as, cylindrical. It is defined as cylindrical. What color it is? It is non-green, cylindrical, non-green, descending, water, absorbing plant axis. So the root is a cylindrical, non-green, descending, water absorbing plant axis which is involved in the absorption of water. But what are the characteristic features of these roots? So what are the characters? When we look at the characters of these roots, they are non-green in color. You people know that these roots are non-green in color. Why? Because roots lack chlorophyll pigments as they are present under the ground. Usually, I am telling, so these roots are present under the ground usually, and hence they lack chlorophyll pigment. When they lack chlorophyll pigment, they will be appearing non-green in color. And they are descending plant axis. I told you in the definition itself, I am telling them as descending plant water absorbing plant axis. That means these roots are positively geotrophic. So roots anta heli nodaga, they are positively geotrophic. They are positively geotrophic. What do you mean by positively geotrophic? Positively in the sense, these roots usually grow towards the ground. They will grow towards the gravity, towards the ground. So that is called as the positively geotrophic anta heli kariyuvanthadu aa ಒಂದು character ಗೆ. And these roots are negatively geotrophic. They are positively geotrophic, but they are negatively phototrophic. What do you mean by that? They are negatively phototrophic in nature. So what do you mean by negatively phototrophic? That means no roots will be growing towards the sunlight. So ಎಲ್ಲಾದರೂ ನೋಡಿದೀರಾ roots ನ ಮೇಲೆಗಡೆ ಹೋಗಿ ಬೆಳೆಯುವಂತದ್ದು, that is towards the sunlight? No. And hence the roots are termed as negatively phototrophic. That is, these roots dahlia or sweet potato. So in those roots we can find the presence of small buds, adventitious buds. So that is exceptions. But usually the roots are without nodes, without leaves as well as without buds. So what is the function of root? So before going to the function of roots, are they branched? Are the roots branched? Of course. So the roots are branched. The roots are branched. See, if this is the root, for example, we can see the presence of branches here. So these roots, they bear branches, and these branches are endogenous in origin. So these branches in there, here they are endogenous. They are endogenous in origin in the sense. What do you mean by endogenous in origin? Endo means within. So if this is the structure of root, this is the outside structure of root, these branches are simply not originated from outside this root, but these roots are originated from within. ಒಳಗಡೆಯಿಂದ ಈ ಒಂದು ರೂಟ್ ಏನಿದೆ ಆ ರೂಟ್ ಒಳಗಡೆ ಸ್ಟ್ರಕ್ಚರ್ ಇಂದ ಏನಾಗ್ತದೆ, it is getting arised. These lateral roots, these branches, they usually arise from the pericycle. Let us speak about this pericycle when we are talking about anatomy. Then you will come to know what is this pericycle. Pericycle, it is usually made up of parenchyma cells which is present within the root. So from the pericycle what happens? The branches of the roots arises. So ಯಾವಾಗ ಆ ಒಂದು structures ಒಳಗಡೆಯಿಂದ arise ಆಗುತ್ತೆ roots. So that is called as endogenous origin. How about exogenous origin? If for example root hairs ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ ನೋಡಿದಾಗ they arise from outside, that is epidermal region. Epidermis is nothing but the outermost covering of the root. So skin of the root ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ಬೋದು. If the structures are arising from the epidermal region, that is called as exogenous origin. Example for this is root hairs. So root hairs are exogenous in origin. These roots will be having small thread-like structures. So these roots and root branches will be bearing small thread-like structures which are formed on the epidermal region. So those are called as root hairs. It is exogenous in origin. Whereas these branches, lateral branches or side branches of the roots, they are arise from within the root. So within the root in the air arise ಆಗ್ತದೆ, that is called as endogenous. So the branches of roots are endogenous in origin, whereas root hairs are exogenous in origin. So that is about the branches. And what else is left with the roots? What are the different characters of roots? Each and every functional root. So you people know that roots are functional in nature usually. So each and every functional root will be protected by a cap-like structure called as root cap. What do we call for that? Root cap. So this root cap, it provides protection. It provides protection to the functional roots. Functional roots usually tips. So at the tip of each and every functional root we can find. See, if this is the root, here at the tip of this functional root we can find a cap-like structure, and that is called as a root cap. It is called as a root cap. But what are the different functions of a root? What is the function of root? So when you people look at the roots, so functions anta heli nodidaga, the basic main function of root is to provide anchorage. That is, these roots will hold the soil firmly, right? So the function of roots anta heli nodidaga, it helps in the anchorage. These roots helps in the anchorage or binding. Binding anta ಒಂದು term na use ಮಾಡಬಹುದು, because these roots, they will hold They are involved in the absorption of water. So they are involved in the absorption. They are involved in the absorption of water and mineral salts. They are involved in the absorption of water and mineral salts. And what else is the function of roots? They are also involved in the storage of food materials. So, ಇಲ್ಲಿ roots ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ ನೋಡಿದಾಗ most of the roots they are involved in the storage of food materials. In the storage of food materials. And also, there are growth hormones present inside the plant which helps the plant to grow in their height. Not only us, not only human beings or animals, even plants they require hormones to grow, and such growth hormones are some of the growth hormones are secreted from the roots. So they are involved in the secretion of growth hormones. Growth hormones. So some of the growth hormones are secreted where? They are secreted in the roots. So these are the functions of root. One, the roots helps in the anchorage and binding of the soil so that this plant it will be standing firmly so that it will not fall off so easily. And also the roots helps in the absorption of water and mineral salts. So ಏನು absorption ಆಗಬೇಕು ವಾಟರ್ ಗೆ ಆ ಒಂದು ಪ್ಲಾಂಟ್ಸ್ ಗೆ ವಾಟರ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು ಅಂದಾಗ we will not provide the water to the leaves. Leaves will not drink water or suck the water. But which part of the plant will be gaining the water or taking the water? Those are roots. So the roots are involved in the absorption of water and along with water, mineral salts also. And some of the roots, most of the roots when we look at the structures, these are involved in the storage of food materials. So leaves, we people know that leaves are the structures which are present in the shoot system. So photosynthesis agi by the process called as photosynthesis, these leaves will be preparing their own food. So the excess of food should be stored in different structures of the plants, right? And one structure which the plants opt to store the food materials is the roots. Roots also are involved in the storage of certain food materials. And then they are also involved in the secretion of different growth hormones. Arises. You people know from which part of the plant does a new individual arise? It's seed, right? So when we take a seed, when we soak them in water, what happens? They will germinate. Actually they will be germinated. Usually in normal terms we will call them as sprouts or germinated seeds. When you place these germinated seeds inside the soil, we can see the development of a new individual plant, right? See here, to understand the development of roots, first let us take a look at the structure of seed. Here, just simply I am telling the structure of seed. A seed, after the removal of seed coat, we can see the fleshy leaf-like structures like this. Say for example, lab, nothing but aurekai or beets. When you people remove the outermost protective layer called as seed coat, you can come across two leafy-like thick fleshy structures, and these are called as cotyledons. What do we call for them? These are called as cotyledons. Plural. Single leaf-like structure is called as cotyledon. What is the function of this cotyledon? This cotyledon is involved in the storage of food materials. So cotyledons are the thick, fleshy, green, leaf-like structures involved in the storage of food materials. And these two cotyledons are held by a narrow structure here. So here a narrow structure is there. It will be holding these two cotyledons together. And this narrow structure, it will be very narrow, but here I am writing a little big to make you people understand. So cotyledon and this is the embryonal axis. The tip of this embryonal axis which is lying just below this cotyledons, this structure this is called as radicle. So what do we call for this tip? This tip is called as radicle. This tip is called as radicle and this tip is called as plumule. See here, after seed germination, this tip, what is this? Radicle, it develops into roots or it gives rise to the formation of roots. Whereas this plumule, it gives rise to the shoot. Plumule, it is a tip which is present above the cotyledonary node. This tip gives rise to the formation of shoots. Radicle, it is a tip, embryonic axis tip which is lying below the cotyledonary node or cotyledons, and this radicle gives rise to the formation of roots. So now you came to know that roots are formed from the radicle, whereas shoots are formed from the plumule of the seed or embryo. So from which structure of the seed these roots arises? Usually the roots arises from the radicle. So these roots, they usually arise from the structure called as radicle. So what happens once the roots are formed from the radicle? In some plants what happens? The roots which are formed from the radicle, they become more prominent and elongated. See here? So here I will write once again. So this is the radicle. And this radicle, it gives rise to the formation of root. I told you. So some roots which are formed from the radicle, what happens? This structure or the root which is formed from the radicle, it elongates. And it becomes more prominent, and such type of root is called as primary root. What do we call for this structure? The primary root is a structure which has been arised from the radical part of the embryo, and this root becomes more prominent and elongates, and this is called as primary root. And this primary root, it undergoes branching. It undergoes branching here and there like this. And those branches which arises from the primary root are called as secondary roots. We call them as secondary roots. Again, these secondary roots again undergoes branching. See here, again they are undergoing branching like this. They are not staying quiet, right? Okay. Again, these secondary roots, they are undergoing branching. And again, the branches which are formed from the secondary roots are called as tertiary roots. What do we call for them? They are called as tertiary roots, and the primary root and its branches together are called as taproots. So what do we call for them? The primary root together with its branches are called as taproots. Right. Once again I will go through it. See here I have just written the structure of seed. The roots usually develops from the radical part of the seed. And in some plants what happens? The roots which have arisen from the radical part, they grows big. They become more elongated and prominent, and that root is called as the primary root. At some places, these primary roots undergoes branching, and those branches that are arise from the primary root are called as secondary roots. Again, these in turn, which secondary roots, these in turns undergoes branching, and those branches which are arise from the secondary roots are called as taproots. The taproots are called as true roots. Why? Why? Only the roots which arises directly from the radical are only called as the true roots. So what do you mean by true roots? The roots which arise from the radical part of the embryo are called as true roots, and the primary root together with its branches, primary root together with its branches are called as taproot system, and these taproots are called as true roots because they are arised from radical. They are arised from radical. Okay. And there are two other types in root system. One is, here I will write, one is the fibrous roots, and the other one is the adventitious roots or root system. We can call them as a root system. What do you mean by fibrous roots? I told you usually roots arises from the radical part of the embryo. But in some plants what happens? Unfortunately, the root which has arisen from the radical, it is called as primary root of the head. But in some plants what happens? This primary root, it is short-lived. What happens? This primary root, here in this plant, the primary root has arisen from the radical part of the embryo, but it is short-lived. What happens within a few days? So within no time what happens? This primary root, it is short-lived, it decays. And just what happens? Many fiber-like thin, slender structures arises from the basal region of the stem. When the primary root decays here, what happens in some plants? When the primary root decays here, the many number of thin, slender, hair-like structures or roots arises from the basal part of the stem. And these roots, they are very thin. So these roots in here, they are thin, they are slender, and they appear as a bunch of fibers. And these appears as a bunch of fibers. And these roots which are arising from the basal region of the stem are called as fibrous roots. So what do we call for them? These are called as fibrous roots. So these are the main roots that are arising from the basal region of the stem. Right. And these roots, again they will undergo branching. There is no doubt in that. See here, these fibrous roots, even though they are looking like a bunch of branches, even though they are thin, slender, fiber-like structures, they will also undergo branching. And this looks like a bunch of fibers, and this is called as fibrous root system. In which plants we come across the fibrous root system? These fibrous root systems can be seen usually in monocots. So example for fibrous roots is monocots. What is the example here? Fibrous root system can be seen in case of monocots. And where can we see these fibrous roots? Whether they are aerial or underground? They are underground, right? So they will be embedded inside the ground. So these fibrous roots are thin, slender, and they appear like a bunch of fibers. These thin, slender fibers and their branches together, it is called as fibrous roots, and they are usually underground. And one more thing I would like to add here. These fibrous roots are usually surface feeders. They are usually surface feeders. What do you mean by the term surface feeders? Have you ever come across the roots of coconut tree? See here, this is the coconut tree. You might have seen that the roots will be near to the soil itself. Right, you can see them. So those roots which will not penetrate deep inside the soil, but they will be present near to the surface surface of the soil, but within the soil are called as surface feeders. So they are not binding the soil particles that much. So ಅಷ್ಟು ಸ್ಟ್ರಾಂಗ್ ಆಗಿ ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡಿರಲ್ಲ, it is easy to uproot, right? So those are called as surface feeders. But back to taproot system. Taproots ಏನಿದೆ, they are usually taproot system ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ ನೋಡಿದಾಗ they are usually deep feeders. They are usually deep feeders. Why? It is very difficult to remove the plants. Some of the plants along with their roots, right? Why? Because this main root, primary root ಏನಿದೆ, it will be strongly, deeply embedded inside the soil, and it becomes very difficult for us to remove, uproot them, right? So these are called as deep feeders. That means this primary root, in case of taproot system, what happens? They will enter inside the soil very deeply, and hence they are called as deep feeders. Even though the primary root is deep feeder here, some of the lateral branches which are arising from the primary root, so that might be secondary root or tertiary roots, they will be present near the soil. Don't get confused to that. So if this is the soil level, some of them they will undergo profusely branch, right? So like this. Here what happens? Some of the branches, that is usually tertiary branches, they will be lying near the soil. So some might be surface feeders, but the main root that is the primary root, it is a deep feeder in taproot system. Back to fibrous roots. Fibrous roots do not contain primary root. Primary root is short-lived here. Once it decays, a number of thin, slender, thread-like structures arises from the basal region of the stem, and these fibers together with its branches are called as fibrous roots. They are usually surface feeders, usually seen as monocots, right? Now let us move on to the adventitious roots. What do you mean by adventitious roots? I told you, roots are usually born from the radical part of the embryo or seed. But when you look at some banyan trees, here I write, this is the tree trunk, these are the branches. Here on the branches you can find the presence of certain roots hanging down. These roots arise from the radical part of the embryo? No, they are arising from where? They are arising from the branches. And also, when you look at the sugar cane, in sugar cane you can find the presence of some roots, aerial roots arising from the basal nodal region. If this is the stem, our the ground hatra nodes iruttalla, from those nodal region you can find the presence of some roots present here. Again, here the roots are arising from the stem, and when you look at the Sasuria oblongata, mayflower anta heli karitivi, night queen anta heli karitivi, Brahma Kamala. So Brahma Kamala énide, it is called as Sasuria oblongata. Bryophyllum is different. Bryophyllum, it is called as kappe chippina gida anta heli karitare. Whatever. So ಎರಡನ್ನೂ ನೋಡಿದಾಗ when you place a leaf on the soil surface, they will start forming small thread-like structures, nothing but the roots. See here, when you place these leaves horizontally on the soil surface, you can find the presence of arrangement of small thread-like structures towards the lower surface of the leaf. See, if you look at the roots in these structures, none of these roots are arising from the radical part of the embryo. If the roots are not arising from the radical part of the embryo, but if the roots are arising from any other part, so any part of the plant other than radical, such roots are called as adventitious roots. So what are adventitious roots? The roots, here I write, the roots which arise from any part of adventitious roots. And these adventitious roots, are they seen only in monocots or dicots? Not like that. So adventitious can be found both in monocots as well as dicots. So adventitious roots can be seen both in monocots as well as dicots. Here I have written banyan tree. So this is an example. And here I have written the sugarcane. Also maize is also an example. Maize. Also pandanus. It is somewhat will be looking like a palm tree that belongs to the monocot here. Sugarcane, maize, pandanus. One more is monstera. This monstera there, these mature days will be having holes. They will be having holes just like seen in Swiss cheese. Tom and Jerry cheese tinatala jerry. So they will be having large holes, right? So such holes can be seen in the developing older monstera leaves, and hence it is also called as monstera deliciosa anta heli karithivi. It is an epiphyte. Epiphyte in the sense these monstera, it is seen growing on the other plants for shelter agirbodu or support agirbodu. So these are all examples of monocots. They are from monocots. Dicots anta heli nodidaga banyan tree. Is that clear? So these are the examples, and one more thing, bryophyllum. So bryophyllum also, and then Sasuria oblongata, that is also an example. Sasuria oblongata. So these are also examples for the plants bearing adventitious roots. In banyan tree, we can find the presence of or arrangement of the roots from the branches, from aerial parts. Whereas, in case of sugarcane or maize, in sugarcane and maize, we can see the similar like structures. So here, what is happening? From the basal nodal region, we can find the arrangement of adventitious roots. And in some, here we can find the arrangement of adventitious roots from the basal region of these roots. And one more thing, these adventitious roots, they might be underground or area. So, ಮೇಲ್ಗಡೆ above the ground ಆಗಿರಬಹುದು ಅಥವಾ under the ground ಆಗಿರಬಹುದು. So, on the roots, if they are developing from any part of the plant part other than radical, those are called as adventitious roots. And now let us go through some of the MCQs. Question number 1. Taproots are called true roots because options: they arise directly from radical, absorbs water, that is option B. Option C, stores food. D, none of the above. So which will be the right option? Taproots are called as true roots. Why? Because they are arise from the radical directly. So which will be the right option? Option A. Next question. Bamboo is a options. Option A, perennial. Option B, annual. C, biennial polycarpic. D, perennial monocarpic. So what type of a plant it is? Bamboo. Bamboo, it is a perennial, that is it lives for many years, but flowers only once in their lifetime, and hence it comes under perennial but monocarpic. So which is the right option? Option D. Next question. Smallest known angiosperm is options. Option A, chrysanthemum. Option B, wolfia. Option C, mimosa pudica. Option D, drosera. Which is the smallest known angiosperm? It is wolfia. Option B, whose diameter is 0.1 millimeters. Fibrous roots are options. Option A, deep feeders. Option B, surface feeders. Option C, both A and B. Option D, none. Fibrous roots. So what type are they? Fibrous roots, they are surface feeders. Option B. Next question. Shoot system develops from. From where the shoot system develops? Options. Option A, radical. B. Cotyledon, C. plumule, D. seed coat. From where the shoot system arises? It arises from the plumule part of the embryo or seed.